Welcome to Live, Work, Stay with Billy Kay. I'm Billy Keisling, the mayor of Beaufort. Today we have a great show. I've got City Manager Bill Prokop who's going to be joining us, and we're going to talk about something called the budget. And we're going to try to talk about it in a lot more depth than you will read about it in the newspapers or here on the street. Just stick around, we'll have a good show. Today I have with me Beaufort City Manager Bill Prokop. And Bill, I thought it would be interesting for us to talk a little bit about the budget.
Okay.
We hear people say no taxes. We hear people say no fees. But we really don't have people talk about the budget the way we talk about it. We spend 3 months going through a process of department by department. Council members even visit the departments. And for us, the budget for city council or a county or a state for that matter, or the federal government, what a budget really does is commit you to a certain direction in terms of meeting the needs of the citizens.
Correct.
The other half of it is, where does the money come from? And how do you make sure that you don't spend more than you do? During this year's budget, with probably 3 work sessions, a public hearing on the budget, and a first and second reading, not one citizen came and commented on the budget. I'd like to think that it's because they think we're doing a good job. I'd rather believe that it's because as long as you're not going to tax them, they don't really care about the details. And it's so important because the details are what it's really all about. This year, for example, you recommended a $35 per vehicle fee to pay half of the costs of what we spend on maintaining state-owned roads, sidewalks, stormwater services. I voted for that. I was in the minority, and council didn't accept it.
Right.
But I voted for it not necessarily because I wanted the fee, but I think people have to understand that we're managing their money, we're setting priorities for their city, and there needs to be more accountability, and they need to understand.
Correct.
So I thought maybe you could help me tell the public a little bit about first of all, you can't do anything if you don't have money.
Correct.
So our sources of revenue for the city.
Well, I think it's a good point, and the topic is good. And like you, I'd like to believe that everyone's really happy with what we're doing, and therefore they didn't show up. But I don't think that's the case. I think it is important for people to realize what's behind the budget. And I think and I'm talking for myself and council, are proud this year that I believe in this whole area we had the smallest increase of any taxing authority. Ours was 0.96, not quite 1 mil, versus others, even fire districts, had 2+. So we tried to do a good job. Basically, our revenue comes from several sources. First of all, our property taxes, which is about $4.5 million. Second, our business license, which is about $3.5 million. Then we have, and I've got a sheet over here, and look, we have franchise fees that come in about $2.5 million. And we have other fines and forfeitures, etc., about $2.5 million. And through these various fees, and there's some other miscellaneous ones, it's about $17 million comes in revenue. And the key, which we've had many discussions over the last 2 years about for us, is where we see the growth is our business license fee, which is very important, and the A-tax funding and hospitality taxes that we get. So our total budget with funds interest, which is minimal now, and the revenue that we got from refinancing our bond, our total budget came up to $19,387,000. So, but it's a balance of resources. What we have not had, and we're hoping that we've sort of reached the peak of the mountain now, is we haven't had the growth of bringing in additional taxes. We haven't had the commercial growth. But with just what we have on our plate right now in front of us, between the Walmart development, Harris Teeter possibly coming in, the new Publix that was recently opened a year or so ago, and now some new hotels coming on, that we'll start to see that change. But the impact on taxes or revenue is still at least 2 years away before we see it. So that's our revenue side. On the expense side, like every municipality or local government agency, our biggest expense is public safety. And in our particular case, we're looking at a police department. Our expenses for our police department is roughly $4.5 million. Our fire department's about $4 million. And then I would just say that all of the other departments, which includes planning and code and building inspection and every department, administration, HR, is the balance. But
Sure. What I just think I heard you said, my math's not as good as yours, but if you put the property tax and the business license together, that is pretty much absorbed with public safety.
Public safety cost exceeds it.
So
Correct.
that we're looking at at other revenues from the A tax and the accommodations tax and the hospitality tax, which we get very little of, to franchise fees. And the government, state government has created a local government fund, but we're funded at I think 72%.
About 72% of what we should be
So
getting.
over
is what we get.
$100,000 of money.
Correct.
They passed a law that said we're going to give the cities money, and they're not giving us that.
They're not giving us the
100,000.
full amount.
But the biggest burden that they put on us, meaning the state, is that they have all of these assets out there. When someone falls on a cracked sidewalk at 10 o'clock at night and calls me and say a lot of curse words, "Why can't you fix the sidewalk?" I said, "Do you know who owns the sidewalk?" And this person, relatively educated, informed person, said, "Well, the city." I said, "No, that sidewalk belongs to the state."
Correct.
And it's the state's responsibility to maintain it. Now, what does my good city manager do? The next day, he bites his lip and he sends somebody out because he won't let that dangerous crack stay there because we can't let people fall. We have people who call us and their yards are flooding because the stormwater system isn't working correctly. And I say, "Well, where's the water coming from?" And they say it's coming from a ditch, or it's backing up out of a city drain. And I said, "Well, do you know who owns that?" And they said, "Well, the city owns that." And I said, "No, that belongs to the state."
Right.
And you end up spending $60,000 for a special piece of equipment that even the state office down here doesn't own.
Correct.
To go and dig the roots out of a pipe where the oak tree roots have integrated into an old system.
Correct. And I think to add to that, none of this is really new. Just this past 2 weeks, a major contractor in town brought to our attention about a stormwater issue down in the Point area that he mentioned that he looked at 8 years ago. And it is a state problem. It's exactly what you said. It's a crushed drain. But for 8 years, it hasn't been fixed. And now it's starting to move out into the street, which is a city street. And it's starting to create cracks in the street. But it's a problem that it's existed. The state acknowledges and looks at it, but says, well, we don't have any funds to fix it. And you can go on to the, as you say, this year we had to cut out some things that we wanted to do. You go right now down on the corner of, I believe it's Bladen and Charles, or about Bladen and Craven, and the sidewalk's all sunk in. It's a state road, but someone's going to see that and say exactly what you say is, well, it's the city's fault to fix that. So we're spending and have been spending over $700,000 a year repairing that. Just one thing alone, we contract the company that brings in the vac truck to do the drain cleaning. That's $60,000 the last 3 years we've spent on it. And probably more than 80% of the work is on drains that are in state roads. So the state local agency wants to work with us and helps out and is cooperative, but their hands are tied with both money and equipment. So it's a real problem for all municipalities. Today's local newspaper, letters to the editor. Not in our community, but down in Bluffton, somebody's writing, which I've said before, they're really upset that at 278, where 170 goes towards 46, the median hasn't been cut since they planted it there. And it's, again, it's today's newspaper, and their comment is the DOT doesn't do anything. They cut it once a year. It looks terrible. We spent millions of
You
dollars.
look at the new Highway 46 from 278 over to the Circle, and it's like there's a forest there.
Correct.
And, you know, I know the state doesn't have money. I know they've been debating it for a number of years. I was in the state legislature, and I was probably guilty too. It's only since I became part of local government, where the rubber hits the road, where the people called me, as I've come to think about that. So when legislators say no taxes, they ought to also be looking at the issues that they're not dealing with, because they're not day-to-day issues. I get a call, I call you, something gets fixed. We got to take a break, but we'll be right back.